Admiral Sarah Kozlov stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of the United Nations Galactic Relations Building, watching the sun set over Lake Geneva. Behind her, the emergency council chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Diplomats from every nation whispered to each other in worried tones. Something big was happening and nobody liked the feel of it. "They're coming through now," Ambassador Chenwei announced, his face pale. The holographic projectors hummed to life, filling the center of the room with 12 towering alien figures. The Galactic Council had arrived. Sarah recognized them from her military briefings. The tall bird-like Vakrians stood in the center, their leader. Around them gathered the other elder races, species who had been traveling the stars for thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. They looked down at the human representatives with expressions that Sarah had seen too many times before. Contempt. "Humans of Earth," the Vakrian speaker began, their voice translated into perfect English by the communication system. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding your species' participation in civilized space." Sarah's jaw tightened. The way they said civilized made it sound like humans were anything but. In the 73 years since your species achieved faster-than-light travel, you have expanded at an alarming rate. 47 star systems now contain human colonies. Your military fleet grows larger each year. Your research into weapons technology continues despite our warnings. The Vakrian paused, letting the accusations hang in the air. The Council has determined that humanity poses a risk to galactic stability. Ambassador Chen stepped forward. "With respect, Council members, humanity has violated no laws. We have followed every protocol for colonization. Our military exists only for defense." "Defense?" Another Council member, a crystalline being called a Shardborn, interrupted with a sound like breaking glass. "You have more warships than the Vakrian Protectorate. You have weapons capable of destroying planets. What do you defend against, human? We have maintained peace for 3,000 years. Perhaps you've maintained peace because you're all already powerful," Sarah muttered, too quietly for the translators to pick up. But Ambassador Chen shot her a warning glance anyway. The Vakrian continued. "The Council offers humanity a choice. You will reduce your military fleet by 90%. You will cease all weapons research. You will accept Council peacekeepers on your worlds to ensure compliance. You will submit to protective governance until such time as your species demonstrates maturity." The room erupted. Human diplomats shouted protests. Some called it outrageous. Others called it what it really was, subjugation. "And if we refuse?" Ambassador Chen asked, his voice cutting through the noise. "Then the Council will take corrective measures," the Vakrian said simply. "You have 30 standard days to comply. We hope you will choose wisdom." The holograms vanished, leaving the humans in stunned silence. Sarah didn't wait for the arguments to begin. She walked out of the chamber, her mind already racing. 30 days. The Council thought they were being generous, giving humanity a month to surrender everything they'd built. They thought humans would debate, would fracture, would eventually bow to the inevitable. They were wrong. In her private office, Sarah activated her secure communication link. The face of General Marcus Hayes appeared on the screen. He commanded Earth's home defense fleet. "You watched?" Sarah asked. "Every word," Marcus replied grimly. "They actually think we'll just roll over. Some will want to comply. They'll say we can't fight the entire galaxy. That resistance is suicide." Sarah pulled up star charts on her secondary screen. "But you and I both know what this really is." "A preemptive strike disguised as peacekeeping," Marcus finished. "They're afraid of us, so they want to break us before we become a real threat," Sarah nodded. "Start Protocol Nightfall, quietly. No official channels." Protocol Nightfall was a contingency plan that wasn't supposed to exist. If humanity ever faced an existential threat from the Council, certain assets would be moved, certain fleets dispersed, certain research facilities relocated. The plan assumed the Council might not give humanity the courtesy of a warning, but they had. 30 days. "It might be enough, Sarah," Marcus said carefully. "If we do this and they find out we're preparing for war instead of compliance, they might not wait the 30 days. Then we'd better be ready early," Sarah replied. "Because, Marcus, I've read the histories. I know what happens when a powerful group demands another group disarm for their own good. It never ends with peace." Over the next 2 weeks, the debate on Earth raged. News networks showed endless discussions. Some experts argued for compliance. "We're one species against 12, they said. We've been in space for less than a century. They've been out here for millennia. We can't win, others argued for resistance. This is tyranny. Today they take our ships. Tomorrow they take our colonies. Eventually they'll take Earth itself. The government was split. The European Union leaned toward negotiation. The African coalition demanded defiance. Asia was divided. The Americas couldn't agree. But while politicians talked, the military acted. Admiral Kozlov traveled from fleet to fleet, speaking privately with commanders. She didn't order them to prepare for war. She simply asked them questions. If the Council strikes first, can your ships fight back? If they deploy their forces around Earth, do you have a plan? If communications are cut, do you know what to do? Every commander understood what she was really saying, and every commander began making quiet preparations. On day 15, Sarah was inspecting the orbital shipyards at Proxima Station when her communication badge chirped urgently. Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout human space. Council ships, hundreds of them appearing from faster-than-light jumps. Sarah's blood ran cold. Battle stations, now. Get everyone into emergency shelters. She never finished the order. The first missile struck the civilian section of Proxima Station, tearing through the hull like paper. Atmosphere vented into space. Sarah was thrown against a bulkhead as the station shook. Emergency lights flashed red. Sirens screamed. Through the viewport, she watched in horror as more missiles slammed into the shipyards. Construction docks exploded. Ships still being built shattered into debris. And this wasn't just happening here. Reports flooded in from across human space. Kepler 442b research facility, destroyed. Earth's orbital defenses under attack. Colony worlds blockaded. They hadn't waited 30 days. They'd given humanity time to consider surrender, but they'd never intended to wait for an answer. The Council had decided to break humanity quickly, before resistance could organize. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd assumed humanity wasn't already prepared. They'd assumed humans would need time to react, to plan, to coordinate. They'd forgotten that humans had spent 10,000 years fighting each other. War wasn't something humans needed to prepare for. It was something they'd never stopped being ready for. As Proxima Station burned around her and rescue teams pulled her from the wreckage, Admiral Sarah Kozlov made a choice. The Council wanted to teach humanity a lesson about power and fear. They were about to learn one themselves. The attack on Proxima Station lasted 12 minutes. When it was over, 4,000 humans were dead. Construction workers, engineers, scientists, families who lived on the civilian decks. The Council called it a surgical strike against military infrastructure. They'd hit a station where 70% of the population was non-military, Sarah. Kozlov watched the casualty reports from the medical bay where doctors treated her injuries, broken ribs, concussion, burns on her left arm. She'd been lucky. Most people in her section hadn't survived. Admiral, incoming transmission from Earth, a young ensign said, offering her a communication tablet. His hands shook. He couldn't have been more than 20 years old. The face of Secretary General Amara Okafor appeared on the screen. Behind her, Sarah could see the Emergency Command Center, packed with military and civilian leaders. Sarah, thank God you're alive. We've got reports coming in from everywhere. The Council hit us hard. Casualties? Sarah asked. 17,000 dead in the first wave. They targeted the shipyards, research facilities, and defensive platforms. But Sarah... Amara leaned closer to the camera, her voice dropping. They failed. Protocol Nightfall saved us. The critical facilities you moved last week weren't where the Council thought they'd be. The fleets you dispersed weren't in their home ports. They hit the targets they expected to find, and half of them were empty. Sarah felt a grim satisfaction. What about Earth itself? They tried to deploy an EMP network in orbit. Would have knocked out every satellite, every communication system, everything electronic on the surface. But our home fleet was already in position. We destroyed the deployment ships before they could activate the network. Amara's expression hardened. The Council made a mistake, Sarah. They told us we had 30 days, but they attacked on day 15. That tells us everything we need to know about their honor. What's our response? Sarah asked, already knowing the answer. The United Earth government has declared a state of war. All military commanders are authorized to engage Council forces on site. The gloves are off. Amara paused. And Sarah? Command wants you to lead the Outer Rim Defense Fleet. Everything beyond the core systems is yours. Make them regret this. Sarah touched the bandage on her arm, thinking of the 4,000 people who'd been working beside her just hours ago. I intend to. Within hours, Sarah was aboard the UES Defiant, the flagship of the Outer Rim fleet. The ship wasn't the biggest or the most heavily armed in the human fleet, but it was fast and its crew was experienced. They'd been on patrol near the edge of human space when the attack began, following Protocol Nightfall's instructions to maintain scattered positions. Status report, Sarah ordered as she took her position in the command chair. The bridge crew worked efficiently around her, their faces grim but focused. We've got 63 ships in the immediate fleet, Admiral, Commander Yuki Tanaka reported. She was Sarah's second-in-command, a veteran of the Mars independence conflicts. Another 200 scattered across the Outer Rim. Council forces hit the shipyards and research stations, but they didn't expect our combat ships to be deployed already. Council force positions? Sarah asked. They've got a major fleet grouping near the Vega sector. Looks like a staging point for follow-up attacks. About 200 Council ships, mixed species. They're sitting there like they own the space, ma'am. Not even running stealth protocols. Sarah studied the tactical display. The Council fleet was positioned exactly where military doctrine said it should be. Central location, good defensive posture, clear supply lines back to Council space. It was textbook strategy for an occupying force. It was also arrogant. They weren't expecting a counterattack. They thought they'd already won. Commander Tanaka, send orders to all Outer Rim ships. Full stealth protocols. No active sensors. I want us to gather around the Vega sector like ghosts. Sarah pulled up intelligence reports on her personal screen. The Council's been at peace for 3,000 years. They haven't fought a real war in longer than human civilization has existed. Let's remind them what war actually looks like. Admiral, that's a Council staging area. It'll be heavily defended, Tanaka pointed out. No, Sarah corrected. It'll be heavily armed. There's a difference. Defenses require someone who remembers they're in danger. Over the next 3 days, human ships crept into position around the Vega sector. They moved like submarines in an ancient ocean, running dark using gravity wells and stellar radiation to mask their signatures. The Council fleet remained in position, confident and exposed. Sarah waited until all ships reported ready. Then she gave the order that would truly begin the war. All ships execute attack pattern Omega-7. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and break off before they can coordinate a response. The Defiant dropped out of stealth mode less than 100,000 kilometers from the Council fleet, already firing. Missiles streaked across space, targeting command ships and supply vessels. Railguns accelerated projectiles to a fraction of light speed. Energy weapons carved through shields that weren't even fully powered up. The Council fleet erupted in chaos. Alarms blared across 200 ships as they scrambled to respond to an attack they hadn't believed possible. But human ships were already hitting from 3 different vectors, targeting engines and communication arrays specifically. Break by squadrons, Sarah ordered. Don't give them a mass target. Keep moving. Keep firing. The Defiant wove through space, its pilot executing maneuvers that would have been impossible for the larger Council ships. Human vessels darted in like predators, struck hard, and vanished back into the black before return fire could find them. A Vakrian cruiser tried to pursue one of Sarah's destroyers, but 3 human frigates appeared from nowhere, crippling its engines. The cruiser spun helplessly, unable to maneuver. Admiral, Council forces are attempting to form a defensive formation, Tanaka reported. Too late, Sarah said coldly. Target their flagship. I want it disabled, not destroyed. Let them send a message back to the Council about what happened here. The battle lasted 47 minutes. When it was over, the Council had lost 38 ships destroyed and 72 disabled. The human fleet had lost 5 ships with 11 more damaged, but still combat capable. As the surviving Council ships limped away toward their own territory, Sarah broadcast a message on all frequencies, knowing it would be recorded and sent back to the Council worlds. This is Admiral Sarah Kozlov of the United Earth Forces. You attacked our civilian facilities without warning. You murdered thousands of non-combatants. You called it necessary force. She paused, letting the burning wreckage of Council ships fill the view screen behind her. This is what necessary force actually looks like. You wanted war. You have it. And every time you hurt our civilians, we'll hurt your military 10 times worse. This was just the beginning. She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. Get me damage reports. Coordinate with the other ships. I want repair teams working around the clock. She looked at the tactical display where Council territory glowed in red. We've got a war to fight. Around the bridge, the crew moved with renewed purpose. They'd just proven something important. The Council had numbers and technology. They had experience and confidence. But humanity had something else. They had the desperation of people fighting for survival. They had the fury of people who'd been attacked without warning. And they had 4,000 years of recorded military history teaching them every brutal lesson about how to win wars. The Council had started this war expecting a quick victory. They were about to discover they'd awakened something they didn't understand. They'd awakened humanity's wrath. The Council expected the war to be over in 3 months. They had superior numbers, better technology, and thousands of years of experience. They'd fought the early expansion wars, the resource conflicts, the border disputes that eventually led to the formation of the Galactic Council itself. They knew warfare, but they'd forgotten what it meant to fight for survival. 6 weeks after the Battle of Vega Sector, Admiral Kozlov stood in the tactical center of the Defiant. Studying reports that would have seemed impossible a few months ago, human forces were winning. Not everywhere, not all the time, but enough to matter. The Council's lost another supply convoy, Commander Tanaka reported, highlighting a sector on the star map. That's the 5th one this week. They're having trouble keeping their forward fleet supplied. Sarah nodded. They're used to supply lines that run through safe space. They don't know how to protect logistics under combat conditions. It was one of many lessons the Council was learning the hard way. Their military was designed for peacekeeping and border patrols, not sustained warfare. They had powerful ships but predictable tactics. They had advanced weapons but rigid command structures. They fought like police officers trying to restore order. Humans fought like humans always had, dirty, creative, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. "Show me the latest tactical innovations," Sarah said. Tanaka pulled up a series of battle reports. Each one showed a different way human forces had adapted to fighting enemies with superior technology. In the Kepler system, human frigates had surrounded themselves with clouds of debris and scrap metal, creating artificial asteroid fields. When Council ships pursued them, their sophisticated sensors were overwhelmed by thousands of contacts. Human ships, using simpler visual targeting, picked them off one by one. Near Proxima Centauri, engineers had rigged cargo containers with primitive rocket engines and filled them with explosives. The Council's advanced sensors dismissed them as space junk, right up until the containers detonated, crippling a shard-borne battleship. In the Outer Rim, human Marines had boarded a disabled Council ship and hacked their communication network. For 3 days, false orders spread through Council forces, sending ships to empty sectors and canceling supply runs. By the time the Council figured out what was happening, 2 fleets had burned through their fuel reserves chasing phantom targets. "They're starting to call you the Reaper of the Rim in their communications," Tanaka said with a slight smile. "Our intelligence teams intercepted transmissions where Council commanders are requesting transfers away from any sector you're operating in." Sarah felt no satisfaction. Every battle won meant more deaths on both sides, but she'd learned long ago that being sorry wouldn't stop a war. Only winning would. "What's the status on Project Phantom?" she asked. Tanaka's expression grew serious. "The first batch is ready. 300 drone ships fully automated, equipped with stolen Council IFF transponders. They look like Council vessels on sensors, but they're completely under our control." "Deploy them," Sarah ordered. "I want them integrated into our fleets within the week. The Council thinks they know how many ships we have. Let's make them doubt everything they see." The drone ships, what the media was calling ghost fleets, were a turning point. Built quickly in hidden facilities, powered by AI systems that didn't risk human lives, they could execute maneuvers that would kill organic pilots. They could accelerate harder, turn faster, and take risks no crewed ship could attempt. When Council forces engaged what they thought was a small human squadron, they'd suddenly find themselves facing 30 ships instead of 10. With no way to tell which ones had human crews and which ones were expendable drones. But technology alone wasn't winning the war. It was the human soldiers themselves. Sarah watched combat footage from the Battle of Hadley's World, where a Council occupation force had landed to secure a human colony. The Council troops were professional, well-equipped, and followed their doctrine perfectly. They established a perimeter, set up defensive positions, and waited for the colonists to surrender. Instead, the colonists fought back. Not with military precision, but with desperate innovation. They used farming equipment as weapons. They turned irrigation systems into booby traps. They hid in tunnels and struck at night, using knowledge of their own terrain against invaders who relied on sensors and orbital intelligence. One old farmer had driven a fertilizer truck into a council supply depot. The resulting explosion had destroyed enough equipment to force the entire council force to withdraw. The council had rules of engagement, protocol, centuries of military tradition. Humans had desperation and the memory of 10,000 years of warfare against each other. Every dirty trick, every guerrilla tactic, every psychological warfare technique humans had developed over millennia, it all came out now. "Admiral, incoming transmission from Fleet Command," an ensign announced. General Hayes appeared on the screen. Behind him, Sarah could see the Strategic Command Center on Earth, filled with officers coordinating the war effort across dozens of systems. "Sarah, we've got a situation developing," Hayes said without preamble. "Intelligence reports that the Council is pulling ships from 3 different sectors. They're massing a fleet near the Deneb system. Best estimate is 800 ships." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. That was more firepower than humanity had faced in any single battle. Target? They're pointing toward New Harmony colony. 20 million civilians, Sarah. It's our largest colony world outside the Sol system. Hayes looked exhausted. "They're going to hit us where it hurts. Show everyone that they can still strike our population centers. Time until they're in position? 72 hours. Sarah studied the star map, her mind racing. New Harmony was too far from any major human fleet. By the time reinforcements arrived, the battle would be over. The colony's orbital defenses were strong, but not strong enough to hold against 800 council ships, unless they didn't have to fight all 800 at once. "Marcus, how many ships can we pull from other sectors without leaving our positions exposed?" "Maybe 200 if we strip the defensive fleets to minimum coverage." "Do it. And send me everything intelligence has on that council fleet. Command structure, species composition, supply lines, communication protocols, everything." "Sarah, even with 200 ships, I'm not planning to fight them head-on," Sarah interrupted. "The Council still thinks in terms of fleet actions and big battles. They're going to learn that humans fight wars differently." Over the next 60 hours, Sarah assembled her forces, but instead of gathering them all in one place, she spread them across a dozen different positions around the Deneb system. Small squadrons, ghost fleets, and weapons platforms hidden among asteroids and debris fields. When the Council fleet arrived at New Harmony, they found the orbital space seemingly undefended. Just a few defense platforms, easy targets for a force their size. "All ships maintain stealth," Sarah ordered from the Defiant, positioned 3 million kilometers away. "Let them commit to their attack run." The Council fleet moved into orbit, confident and organized. Their commanders were probably already planning the victory celebration. This would be the blow that broke human resistance, the demonstration of Council power that would bring humanity to its knees. Then Sarah gave the order. "Execute Operation Swarm." The attack came from everywhere at once. Ships dropped out of stealth from a dozen different vectors. Missile platforms hidden on asteroids opened fire. Drone fleets that had been drifting like space junk suddenly activated. Even the defense platforms the Council had been targeting revealed themselves as traps, exploding when Council ships came close. The Council fleet tried to respond, but their coordination broke down. They'd been trained to fight unified battles, to maintain formation and follow doctrine. Human forces attacked like a pack of predators, each group operating independently, targeting weak points and breaking off before Council ships could concentrate their fire. A Vacrian commander tried to rally his forces, broadcasting orders for a defensive formation. Human cyber warfare teams intercepted the transmission and flooded the Council network with false orders, sending ships off in wrong directions. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Council never reached New Harmony's surface. When their surviving ships finally retreated, they'd lost 200 vessels destroyed and 300 more too damaged to continue fighting. Human losses: 47 ships. As the Council fleet limped away, Sarah broadcast another message that she knew would be shared across the galaxy. "You came to destroy our home. You brought 800 ships against 20 million civilians. You thought your numbers and your power would be enough. She gestured to the view screen where burning council ships drifted in orbit. You were wrong. Every time you threaten our people, we'll make you pay. This is what happens when you wake the humans. The council was learning, but it was too late to stop what they'd started. 9 months into the war, something unprecedented happened. Human ships crossed into council territory, not as raiders or scouts, but as an invasion force. Admiral Kozlov led a fleet of 300 ships toward the Vakrian home system, knowing that every military analyst would call it madness. The council had been defending human space. Now humanity was bringing the war to their worlds. We're receiving multiple warnings from Vakrian defense forces, Commander Tanaka reported. They're demanding we turn back or face destruction. Ignore them, Sarah said calmly. But make sure our communications array is ready. I want every civilian in this system to be able to hear what I'm about to say. The Defiant pushed deeper into Vakrian space, followed by the rest of the human fleet. Council warships scrambled to intercept, but they were in the wrong positions. They'd never imagined they'd need to defend their core worlds. As the human fleet reached broadcasting range of the Vakrian homeworld, Sarah activated every communication channel, civilian frequencies, news networks, personal devices. If it could receive a signal in the Vakrian system, it was about to hear her message. People of the Vakrian Protectorate, Sarah began, her voice steady and clear. My name is Admiral Sarah Kozlov of the United Earth Forces. 10 months ago, your government launched an unprovoked attack against human civilians. They destroyed our stations, killed thousands of non-combatants, and declared war on our species. Behind her on the broadcast, footage began to play. The attack on Proxima Station, bodies floating in space, children's toys drifting among the debris, medical teams pulling survivors from collapsed sections. The images were horrific, and they were real. Your leaders told you this war was necessary. They said humans were dangerous, that we needed to be controlled. They didn't tell you they attacked first. They didn't show you these images. They didn't count our dead. The feed switched to show Council military positions, not as threats but as targets. We could destroy your orbital facilities right now. We could do to your worlds what your government did to ours. We have the weapons. We have the ships. Sarah paused, letting that sink in. But we won't. Because unlike your leaders, we don't make war on civilians. New footage began playing. Human forces had reached this far into Council space, but they were specifically targeting military installations, factories that built warships, orbital weapons platforms, government command centers. Each strike was surgical, precise. Civilian areas were carefully avoided. We came here to make a point, Sarah continued. Your government started this war believing they were untouchable. They thought their power and their age made them superior. They forgot that might does not make right. We're here to remind them, and you, that every action has consequences. She leaned forward, her expression intense. We don't want your worlds. We don't want to rule you. We want accountability. We want justice for our dead. And we want the galaxy to know that humanity will not be bullied, will not be conquered, and will not quietly disappear because elder races find us inconvenient. The broadcast ended, but the impact rippled across the Vakrian homeworld within hours. Civilians who had been told humanity was losing the war suddenly saw human ships in orbit of their own planet. Citizens who had believed their government's propaganda saw evidence of the unprovoked attack. People who had been assured the war was just and necessary began to question everything. Protests erupted in 3 major Vakrian cities by the end of the day. Admiral, Vakrian defense forces are forming up, Tanaka reported. They're going to make a run at us. Expected. All ships defensive formation. Engage only if fired upon. I want minimal casualties on both sides if possible. The Vakrian fleet approached, and Sarah could see the hesitation in their movements. They were defending their homeworld, but they'd seen the same broadcast as their civilians. They knew humans could have struck the planet itself but chose not to. The standoff lasted 3 hours before the Vakrian fleet withdrew without firing a shot. It was a greater victory than any battle, but Sarah wasn't done. Over the next month, human forces pushed deeper into Council space, always following the same pattern: broadcast evidence of the Council's attack, show footage of human restraint. Target only military assets. Appeal directly to the civilian populations. The strategy worked better than anyone had imagined. The Council species hadn't fought a war in 3,000 years. Their populations had no memory of the costs of combat. They'd been told their military was invincible, their cause just, their leaders infallible. Now they saw their fleets defeated. They saw evidence their governments had hidden. They saw that the dangerous humans were showing more mercy than their own leaders had. Public opinion across Council worlds began to shift. News networks that had supported the war started asking difficult questions. Civilian leaders demanded answers. Protests grew larger and more frequent. The first crack appeared when the Tesserae, one of the smaller Council species, withdrew from the conflict entirely. Their government released a statement calling the war unjust and based on false pretenses. They opened diplomatic channels with humanity, offering medical supplies and humanitarian aid. 2 weeks later, the aquatic Kelvarans followed suit. Their prime minister gave a speech calling for the Council leadership to resign and face accountability for their actions. The Council was fracturing, and they knew it. Intelligence reports that 3 more species are considering withdrawal, General Hayes told Sarah during a secure communication. The Council is holding emergency sessions, but they can't agree on anything. Some want to escalate, others want to negotiate. What about the hardliners? Sarah asked. She knew that desperate people did desperate things. Hayes's expression darkened. That's what worries us. We're picking up unusual energy readings near the old Terminus gate. Sarah felt ice in her veins. The Terminus gate was ancient technology, barely understood even by the Council races. It was capable of generating massive, gravitational distortions, the kind that could collapse a star or tear apart a planet. They wouldn't, she said, but even as she spoke, she knew they might. If the Council hardliners thought they were losing, they might try something catastrophic, a demonstration of power to force humanity to surrender, or at least to show other Council species what would happen if they continued to withdraw support. We need to move fast, Sarah said. If they're going to use the Terminus gate, they'll aim it at Earth. Maximum psychological impact. Sarah, we don't even know how to shut down that technology. Then we'll have to destroy it the old-fashioned way. She pulled up star maps calculating distances and travel times. I need every ship we can spare, and I need them at Terminus within 48 hours. It would be the riskiest operation of the war. The Terminus gate was in the heart of Council, space protected by some of their best defensive systems. But if the hardliners activated it against Earth, billions would die. Sarah began issuing orders, pulling forces from across the theater. This time she wasn't planning a clever tactical strike or a psychological warfare operation. This would be a straight fight, humanity's fleet against whatever the Council could throw at them. But as she prepared for what might be the final battle of the war, Sarah received an unexpected message. It came through diplomatic channels, not military ones. The source was listed as Coalition for Galactic Peace. She opened it cautiously. The message was from representatives of 6 Council species, including 2 that were still officially part of the war effort. Admiral Kozlov, the message began. We are civilians and lower-ranking officials from various Council worlds. We represent a growing movement of beings who believe this war is wrong and must end. We cannot stop our governments alone, but we can help you stop them from making a terrible mistake. The message included detailed intelligence on the Terminus Gate facility, security codes, defensive positions, even the names of scientists who had been forced to work on reactivating the ancient weapon and were looking for a way to sabotage it from within. Sarah read the message twice, hardly believing what she was seeing. Council citizens were actively helping humanity, not because they'd been conquered or coerced, but because they believed it was right. She thought about how the war had started, with the Council attacking human civilians, believing they were superior and humans were dangerous. Now Council civilians were reaching out to those same humans, asking for help to save both sides from their own leaders' worst impulses. Maybe, Sarah thought, humanity hadn't just been fighting for survival. Maybe they'd been fighting for something else too. The right to be heard. The right to be respected. The right to prove that strength and age didn't determine worth. Commander Tanaka, Sarah said, new determination in her voice. "Prepare the fleet. We're going to Terminus. And this time, we're not going alone." The fleet that gathered at the edge of Council space was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in 3,000 years. 300 human warships, bristling with weapons and driven by crews who had learned to fight against impossible odds. But they weren't alone. Alongside them flew ships from the Tesserae and Kelvarans, species that had officially withdrawn from the war. Behind them came something even more remarkable. Unmarked vessels crewed by volunteers from 6 different Council species. Civilians and low-ranking military who refused to let the war end in genocide. Admiral Sarah Kozlov stood on the bridge of the Defiant, looking at the fleet assembled around her flagship. A year ago, this would have been unthinkable. Now it felt like the only possible path forward. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Commander Tanaka announced. "We've integrated the Council volunteers into our tactical network. They're transmitting the security codes now." Sarah nodded. The battle plan was simple because it had to be. The Terminus Gate facility was protected by automated defenses and a garrison of Council hardliners who knew they were fighting for their political survival. Human forces would punch through the defenses while the volunteers provided intelligence and jamming support. They had one objective: reach the Terminus Gate and shut it down before it could be used against Earth. All ships begin the approach. Battle Formation Delta. Council volunteers, stay behind our front line until we've cleared the automated defenses. The combined fleet moved forward, dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Terminus system. Immediately, warning klaxons sounded across every ship. "Automated defense grid activating," Tanaka reported, counting over 200 weapon platforms. "And Admiral, there's a Council fleet holding position around the gate. 60 ships, including the Eternal Resolve." Sarah recognized that name. The Eternal Resolve was the personal flagship of High Counselor Veth, the Vakrian who had delivered the original ultimatum to humanity. The hardliner who had ordered the attack on Proxima Station. "They're hailing us," the communications officer said. "Put it through." High Counselor Veth appeared on the screen. The bird-like alien looked older than Sarah remembered, feathers dulled and eyes sunken. But there was defiance there too, and desperation. "Admiral Kozlov, you've come far from your small corner of space." Veth's voice was cold. "But you've come too far. The Terminus Gate is beyond your reach. Turn back now or we will activate it. Your Earth will be torn apart and your species will be erased from the galaxy." "You'd murder billions to save your pride?" Sarah asked quietly. "I would do what is necessary to maintain order. Humans are chaos. You've proven that by turning half the Council against itself. You've destroyed the peace we built over millennia." Veth leaned forward. "You think you've won because you've made allies? They're fools who don't understand what you really are. When this is over, when order is restored, they'll see their mistake." "When this is over," Sarah said, her voice like iron, "you'll be standing trial for war crimes. You attacked civilians. You're threatening genocide. Those aren't the actions of someone maintaining peace. They're the actions of a tyrant who's lost control. I am saving the galaxy from you." Veth's composure cracked. "You multiply too fast, expand too quickly, fight too well. In 1,000 years, you'll dominate everything. We couldn't allow it." "So you attacked us for what we might do in the future?" Sarah shook her head. "You were afraid of us, and fear made you into exactly the kind of monster you claimed we were." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "All ships engage. Take out those automated defenses. And someone get me a firing solution on the Terminus Gate itself. If we can't shut it down, we'll destroy it." The battle began with a wave of missiles from the human fleet, targeting the automated platforms. The platforms returned fire, but human ships were already scattering using the tactics they'd perfected over months of warfare. The Council garrison ships moved to intercept, but they were too slow, too predictable. Then something unexpected happened. 3 of the Council garrison ships suddenly changed course, moving away from the human fleet. "What are they doing?" Tanaka wondered aloud. The answer came seconds later when those 3 ships opened fire on the other Council vessels. Their IFF signals changed, broadcasting new identification: Coalition for Peace. "They're defecting," Sarah realized. Right in the middle of the battle, more ships began changing sides. Not all of them. Many garrison crews were true believers in the hardliners' cause, but enough to throw the Council defense into complete chaos. Ships that had been fighting together moments before were now firing on each other. The human fleet pressed forward. driving toward the Terminus gate. The massive ancient structure loomed ahead, its surface crackling with energy as scientists inside desperately tried to bring it online. Energy readings from the gate are spiking, Tanaka warned. They're activating it. All ships concentrate fire on the gate's power conduits, Sarah ordered. We need to shut it down now. The Defiant led the charge, its weapons tearing into the gate's supporting structures. Other human ships followed, joined now by the Council volunteers and even some of the garrison ships that had defected. Hundreds of weapons fired in concert, overwhelming the gate's shields. But it wasn't enough. The gate continued powering up, building toward the massive energy release that would tear open a gravitational rift across light years of space. Directly at Earth. Impact in 90 seconds, Tanaka said, her voice tight with tension. Sarah made a decision. Helm, take us into the gate's core. Full speed. Admiral, that's suicide, the helmsman protested. The energy buildup will tear the ship apart. Not if we disrupt it first. Load all forward torpedo tubes with nuclear warheads. We're going to blow the core from the inside. Sarah, no. General Hayes' voice came through on the command channel. He'd been observing from Earth's command center. You can't. There's no other way, Marcus. If that gate fires, Earth dies. Billions of people die. Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. They were afraid, but they trusted her. This is what we signed up for. To protect our world. Whatever it takes. The Defiant accelerated toward the gate's glowing core, weapons blazing. Point defense systems shot down automated defenses. The ship shook as energy discharges washed over the hull. 60 seconds to firing range, Tanaka reported. Then something appeared on the sensors. Another ship moving to intercept them. The Eternal Resolve High Counselor Veth wasn't going to let them reach the gate. Evasive maneuvers, Sarah ordered. Don't let them slow us down. The two ships traded fire, racing toward the gate. The Eternal Resolve was larger and more heavily armed, but the Defiant was faster, and its crew had a year of combat experience. They dodged and weaved, taking hits but dealing more in return. 30 seconds, Tanaka counted. The Eternal Resolve made a desperate move, trying to ram the Defiant. But at the last second, a Tesserae ship appeared from nowhere, its captain broadcasting on all frequencies. For peace. For all species. The Tesserae vessel slammed into the Eternal Resolve, both ships exploding in a massive fireball. The sacrifice gave the Defiant the opening it needed. Firing range achieved, Tanaka announced. Fire everything, Sarah ordered. Every torpedo launched simultaneously, nuclear warheads streaking into the gate's core. The Defiant pulled hard away, engines screaming, trying to escape the blast radius. The explosions came like a chain reaction, each detonation triggering more energy releases inside the gate. The ancient structure, never meant to handle such internal disruption, began tearing itself apart. Energy arced between its segments. Gravitational distortions rippled outward. Brace for impact, Sarah shouted. The shockwave hit the Defiant like a physical blow, sending the ship tumbling. Systems overloaded. Bulkheads buckled. But the ship held together. When the sensors cleared, the Terminus gate was gone. Just debris and dissipating energy, no longer a threat to anyone. Across the fleet, human and council ships alike transmitted messages of relief and triumph. They'd done it. Together. The war didn't end that day, but it might as well have. With the Terminus gate destroyed and High Counselor Veth dead, the hardliners lost their leverage. More council species withdrew from the conflict. Within a week, the council government collapsed entirely, replaced by a coalition of reformers who immediately requested peace negotiations. 3 months later, Admiral Sarah Kozlov stood on Concordia Station, a neutral meeting place built specifically for the peace talks. Representatives from dozens of species filled the conference hall, human and alien working together to build something new. The terms of the peace treaty were harsh but fair. The council would pay reparations for the unprovoked attack. The old power structure would be dissolved. A new galactic assembly would be formed with equal representation for all species, young and old. War crimes trials would be held for those who had ordered attacks on civilians. And humanity would take its place as a full member of galactic civilization, not as subjects or junior partners, but as equals. Sarah stood at the observation deck, watching construction crews work on expanding the station. Human and Vacrian engineers worked side by side. Tesserae supply ships docked next to Earth vessels. It was a strange sight after a year of warfare.